Lily and Jack are awesome kids, very, very kind. They'll talk to anyone. They want to go with anyone. They're just looking to have as much fun as they can. Jack just absolutely loves bugs, dinosaurs, anything like that. But Lily loves girly things, but she also loves doing everything with Jack, bugs. They're like best friends, not just brother and sister. And Jack just absolutely loves bugs, dinosaurs, anything like that. But Lily loves girly things, but she also loves doing everything with Jack, bugs. They're like best friends, not just brother and sister.
Yes, I babysit Jack and Lily. Whenever they went somewhere, I would babysit them. And I had no problem with Jack and Lily would sit with me and watch TV. I would take Jack. He would hold him in my arms. He would pretend he was swimming. He would pretend he was playing airplane. Lily would be running around showing me her dolls. Well, let's start with Jack. Jack was a curious little boy. He was a happy little go-lucky boy. But I'll tell you, if he didn't want to do something, he wasn't going to do it. Because when I would get after him to put his shoes on, and when he was running around his bare feet, I would say, Jack, put your shoes on. I've said this. And he would just stand there and put his arms up, fold his arms up and go, eh. And that's all I would get out of him. Other than that, he was a curious little boy. That's all he would do all day. When he was outside was sit and turn boards over or rocks over looking for bugs and worms. I had my granddaughter down digging worms for the chickens. And he would come down there and he would grab every worm that he could see. And when it would come time to go feed the chickens, he goes, no, they were my friends. I'm keeping them. He would play on the swing. He was a happy-go-lucky boy. Lily, she was a Miss Prim girl, as I would say, if that's what you call it. I guess they call her a diva or whatever, but to me, Miss Prim. Because whenever she would get her clothes dirty, she would go in and change her clothes. I never knew what that girl was going to come out in. She had a kitchen out in the yard. I had to play kitchen. I got to play kitchen for them. Well, for my oldest two grandchildren. And when they weren't here, that's what she did. She'd play with the kitchen. She'd make mud pies. She would pretend she was making hot chocolate or coffee or tea. If a bug got around her, she would scream, there's a bug. And she would go running in the house because there was a bug. Jack would just say, where's the bug? That's all they ever, from what I observed, they just played on the swings a lot. Her and the oldest grandchild would play on the swing. They would sit up there and they'd sing. I would sit there on my doorstep and listen to them sing. They would run around the yard, and that's all I ever heard was Lily say, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie. Come here and play, Jackie. Come here and play. They were bright little kids. They talked a breeze. Like when someone would come into my yard, like if my brother come into my yard, they would come and say hi, and my brother would talk to them, and they would talk to him, and Jack would be there. Oh, look at my worms, or look at my bugs. I remember one day we caught a salamander, him and I, and Daniel said, Jack, you have to let the salamander go, because if not, it'll die. Well, I snuck the salamander out of the bucket, and he looked for that salamander, and he cried, because we let his salamander go. Jack was just into bugs. He loved bugs. Lily was into the kitchen, making mud pies.
Lily is scared of bugs and spiders, the opposite of Jack. When I see them out here in the yard and there's a fly or a bug or something, if Jack gives her one of her bugs, she goes, I don't want that, or worms. She won't touch worms. She won't touch bugs at all. She gets scared of them. She runs in the house when there's a fly or something around her. So I can't see them going in the woods with bugs and flies and no.
They were very sweet kids. Lily's laughter, she was so exciting to be around. She was full of life.
cute.
Jack, he would love his dinosaurs and he loved his little zoo animals and he would play with those for a long time, and he would come like to the barn and he loved to see the horses, and yeah, they had a lot of fun. They were fun kids. We went to the beach a lot. They liked the water. They played in the with the sand, and we would make little sand castles with their baskets, and we had a Easter egg hunt at my place, and they were running around laughing, and I miss them calling me Nene, and we'd color and they play on their little tablets.
Okay, so those clips were probably a bit longer than I had realised, but I figured that I
What
did
else
want to
can you share
cover.
about Jack and Lily?
Pause that. I did want to cover as much as possible in terms of trying to show the lack of anything when it comes to Lily and Jack. Seems like Cindy, who didn't live with them, knew them better than Daniel and Janie did. Now, I'm recording this as a members only. It's a pop-up, so apologies for not letting anyone know that I was going to do it as a pop-up. I just wanted to try and finish getting through this audio that I'd been working through of Daniel, and I was going to do it as a pre-recorded one later in the day, and I thought, why not just record it as a members only? If anyone sees that it's streaming and comes in and watches it, well and good. If not, I've got in here, I've recorded it, and I've gotten a bit further through this audio. So if you are listening to this on replay, then thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in. Please hit that like button. That helps me get this out there into the algorithm and gets it seen by people. Because once I finish streaming, I will be making it publicly available for everyone. So if you're listening on replay, please hit the like button, please share, and please leave a comment. So this is continuing the whole Daniel Charmaine conversation. If you've been watching what I've been putting out in terms of videos in the last couple of days, I'm currently working on editing all the audio from the 9-hour marathon that Daniel did with Sunny. So I'm going through that, editing out all the unnecessary commentary just to make the audio shorter and easier to take in, because 9 hours is just too much for anyone, especially when you've got to wait through bits of commentary that you probably don't want to listen to. And that's not putting any shade on Sunny, but if you've wanting to go back and listen to it and you've already listened to it once before, then the reason you're going back and listening to it is because you want to hear what Daniel said as opposed to the commentary. So this is basically there as a resource for anyone who wants to use it or anyone who just wants to go back and listen to what Daniel has said. Certainly doing it as a resource for other content creators so that you do have that option of just going and finding audio that you can use that's already edited for you. So I'm hoping to get back onto one of those today. I've edited the first 3 hours, so I've got 6 hours to go. Although I have a lot more things to get done in the background as well today. So we'll see. I know that I have mentioned that I'm probably moving away from Lily and Jack's case. That's dependent on a lot of things, but I do intend, before I completely walk away, if I am doing that, I do intend on getting all these case file things finished. So that means finishing this 9-hour marathon, getting that out as shortened content, and also getting all the Durwood audio out from back in June or July, whenever it was, at the same time. I do have a recording of that. Sorry, yawning. I do have a recording of that, or several, I should say, because it's several hours worth. But what I've done is I've basically gone back and I'm going to redo all that as well, just to make sure I'm not missing any bits of audio. So that's kind of next on the project list after finishing with the Daniel and Sunny stuff. That said, I'm also working flat out on the Mackenzie Sharilia case. There's, I believe, something like 90 jail phone calls that I'm batching into lots of 5 to put out. There's also, I've got multiple interviews to put out that were done with various people, family members of the victims, friends of the kids. I shouldn't call them kids. So there's a lot of that I also want to put out. And there's an interview that was done with Mackenzie's father that I really want to dive into. So lots to work on at the moment. So that's going to impact on how much Jack and Nearly content I get out. Of course, there's also other legal paperwork and stuff that I'm working on in the background as well, which takes up quite a bit of time each day. But I won't go down that route. There is someone in. Hi, Brandy. Good to see you in here. I just decided to throw in a pop-up members. I thought I'd just record some more Daniel audio stuff, and if anyone pops up, well and good. If nobody pops up, at least I've got it done. So welcome in. I'm sorry that there's no one in there to chat with you right now, but anyway, I thought, why not just pop up, do a members only, and get through some more of this Daniel audio. So the reason for the title is because this starts with Charmaine asking Daniel to talk about Lily and Jack. And, oh, there's 2 people in there. I'm sorry, Grover. I was just sitting here. I was meant to be working on more paperwork and stuff, and I was just responding to a few comments, like thinking, okay, well, I'll respond to a few comments while I'm getting my brain in gear to deal with some more paperwork. And someone made a comment, I miss your lives. And I went, yeah, I miss my lives too. And I thought, well, I can't really pop up and do a public live right now. So I thought, well, what the heck, I'll just record some stuff, and if people turn up, they turn up, do it as a members. If people don't turn up, well and good too. And I'm just realising that I've been yabbering on thinking that there was nobody in here, and I've just realised that StreamYard isn't actually telling me how many people are in here. Presumably when you do it as a members only, it's not going to tell you who's in here or what. It clearly hasn't got the programming to do that. So it's good to know that I'm not just talking out into blank air. But yeah, I've got no idea who else is in here, so welcome everyone. Okay, so Daniel, talking about Lily and Jack. And look, honestly, it just annoys the crap out of me, and apparently Mouse too. The dogs have already had their morning scare from me playing the audio before, which had Janie on it. Hopefully, now that I've been speaking for a few minutes, I can press play on the audio and they're not going to have a meltdown. I think Mouse has just woken up and realised that he can hear me talking. Hopefully that's all we get from him right now. Okay, so playing a little bit of this audio, and it's frustrating for me.
What else can you share about Jack and Lily? I've been asking for months, and I know I don't ask you specifically because you said that you can't respond. So I stopped. I started asking other people who I knew had contact with you. Can you please ask these questions? And I asked Cheryl these questions, and nobody would answer. What was their favorite foods? What was their favorite colors? Can you just talk about the bright and lovely kids that Jack and Lily were that you remember?
Yeah, we can touch on that. That's
I hate it when he's like, yeah, we can touch on that. Like he's doing her some sort of favour. Welcome in, Rita. Good to see you here. Sorry for the lack of notice on the members. She's given him a lot of cues here in terms of things that he could answer. Things that, if you really knew these kids, it would be enough of a prompt to get you really, really talking. I remember last year when we were heading up to Jack's birthday and I sent Belinda a message and asked her if I gave her a list of things that I was curious about and asked if she could do me some audio to include in a video for Jack. And she struggled only because it was emotionally charged. It was still so early on that, and you probably heard that audio, you could hear that as she went on, she was getting more and more emotional. But the things she said were so real and just gave you this real sense of who Jack was. I don't get that from Daniel. Even with all these prompts from Charmaine that should help him to be able to just, say heaps about Lily and Jack. Anyway, let's listen, you'll see what I mean.
this question's emotionally charged, we'll say, in a way, but yeah, I'll touch on it.
Emotionally charged, we'll say, in a way. Basically, it's not emotionally charged for him. And if it was emotionally charged, you would expect to hear emotion in his voice. It's a flat tone completely. And to say will say is essentially him recognising that, well, this should be an emotional topic, so I'm going to acknowledge it as that, but it's not really emotional for me. And that's why he goes in a way as well. He's trying to make it sound like it is an emotional topic for him, but he's giving himself away with his own words. It's emotionally charged for somebody, but not for Daniel. It's not him saying, I find it really hard to talk about Lily and Jack. It's not like, hey, what's up? Good to see you in here. It's not like when Belinda did the audio for me last year for Jack, and she did really well, given that she was really struggling with her emotions. And then, the last comment was, I'm sorry. And it wasn't I'm sorry, I can't remember anything about Lily and Jack. It was, you could tell from the tone of it, it was a, I'm sorry, this hurts too much to talk about. This is all I can give you. That's emotionally charged. This from Daniel is, he can't even try to pretend that he's emotional over it. There's no I statement. There's no, I'm not sure if I can cope with talking about them, but I'm going to try. There's no, it really hurts me to talk about them, but let me try. There's no even a hint in his voice of it being an emotional thing. Dead flat, exactly.
I think everybody knows by now what their favorite colors were, right? Jack's blue, Lily's pink, or purple. And we can talk about their favorite TV shows. Like Lily liked watching, I don't know, a lot of kids like watching unboxings. And she would watch unboxings of like LOL dolls or Monster High. And she loved that stuff, or loves that stuff.
No idea. And the more you listen, the more you're going to realise it seems like he had zero interaction with Lily and Jack. Oh, everybody knows, you know, their favourite colours. Jack's was blue, Lily's pink or purple. Well, we don't actually know that for certain. We know that that's what they were dressed in. But, you know, how do we know that's not just because Malaya liked dressing them in, you know, boy and girl colours? We really haven't heard much from Malaya in terms of what the kids were like, because Malaya hasn't spoken. And yes, the loves or loved in terms of the unboxing of LOL dolls or Monster High, she loved that stuff or loves that stuff. And he's about to go on about, with his excuse, his usual excuse of, oh, well, you know, I don't mean to do that. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But favourite TV shows is not watching unboxing. Now, I just remembered that I have an image to bring up, hopefully. I think I transferred it onto here. Let me see. I did. Okay, so I have a screenshot of when it comes up, when it eventually comes up. So this is an excerpt from the thing that Malaya did last year. Sorry, I'm just trying to spot where Mouse went. I'm not sure if he was headed outside or, oh no, he's here, right. This is an excerpt from Malaya's statement last year. And I pulled it up because this is the only mention we ever get of Lily and Jack's likes in terms of what they like to watch. So if we scroll down to about halfway down the page, she's like, I'm truly traumatized not being able to hear the sweet sound of their voices, their laugh, when they would sing to a Gabby's Doll House song that now only make me cry when I hear it. I wasn't sure what Gabby's Dollhouse was. I'm not sure if we've even got it in Australia, but I went and looked it up, and it is a TV show by the looks of it, where it has, you know, little sing-along music kind of things. So, straight up, we have this account from Malaya of, clearly they must have watched quite a lot of this Gabby's Dollhouse to sing along with it. That's clearly something that they did enjoy. But Daniel's like, oh, you know, unboxing? Yeah, because they liked that. And I can't help wondering if that's him just kind of reaching, because if you ever checked out his Pokemon channel, that seems to be all it is. Him unboxing. That's a good question, Grover. What does Cheryl's handwriting look like? I know very few people would agree with me, but I do believe that this is Malaya's handwriting. Having gone through with all the handwriting analysis stuff, and maybe I'll do a members only add on to that. But having gone through with all the handwriting analysis stuff, there's a lot in here that makes me believe that it is Malaya writing it. I think the thing with her name, in terms of it missing a letter when she wrote it, I think that comes down to the scribing. I think she probably wrote a rough draft first, and this is the good copy. Welcome in, Ariel. So, but I would like to see Cheryl's handwriting. That is such a good point. But to me, this is the handwriting of someone who is stuck in that teenage mentality. It is teenager handwriting with the over large writing. So all her lowercase letters are taking up like 3/4 of the line. So it's that oversized writing, very much early teen kind of maturity level. Which I'm not sure that I could apply for Cheryl. I would have to hear more about her and learn more about her, but I don't think she is quite as emotionally stunted as Malaya. I think Cheryl's got her own issues, let's say, but what I see here is someone who developmentally is still pretty much at a teenage level. Yes, when she writes Lily, it leans forward. But what's more concerning is when you look at every time she writes Jack, or there's one time where she wrote Jackie, and the angles of it are kind of out of whack. It changes direction in some instances. So when the bit where she's talking about Lily and Jack singing along, the C and the K in Jack angle off in the opposite direction to the J and the A. There's some serious cognitive dissonance going on there, and it's got something to do with Jack. I find that more disturbing than the angle of how she's written Lily. And to me, that says that perhaps whatever happened to Lily and Jack, that Jack was the one who was the original target, perhaps. Welcome in, Dawn. Good to see you here. Now, that's me just going from memory. I haven't got my notes in front of me, but it's something that when I went through the letter the first time, something that really stood out to me was the angles when she wrote Jack. And also words like babies and that crowding in, like she's trying to, and children, she's just trying to squash those thoughts. She's trying not to think about them. But anyway, I'll leave the handwriting discussion for another time. But certainly it would be interesting to be able to see what Cheryl's handwriting looks like. to see if this was written by Cheryl and then signed by Balea. I did try to get a handwriting analyst, a professional handwriting analyst, to take a look at it, but she was a very, very busy person, and she was meant to get back to me in January and she didn't. So I just let that go by the wayside. I was hoping to maybe get Chris McDonough interested in the case again, and then maybe he could have got someone from the Cold Case Foundation to do a handwriting analysis. But same again. I think a lot of the bigger channels see the drama that happens, see the BS that happens, the misinformation. Actually, this writing has better spelling than what we've seen from Cheryl. That is a good point. Spot on. So, I mean, Cheryl definitely seems to have issues with dyslexia or just with her spelling. So that again would put it more towards being Malaya's. Good point. I hadn't thought about that, but the spelling is pretty good here. There's a few instances where she throws in a lot of E's that don't need to be there. Yeah. Impacted. I'd have to look at the original thing because I can't tell from here. What's interesting is that it is scratched out, but it's not scratched out enough that we couldn't when you consider many devices have autocorrect highlighting when writing emails and texts, etc. Yeah, exactly. I think it says, it looks to me that she's written just not knowing where they are, and then she's written make my life, and then crossed that out, and then squeezed in impacted on the line before. I could be wrong because I'm not wearing my glasses, and I don't know how to zoom that using StreamYard, so I'm just guessing at that. I will come back and do more handwriting analysis of this, because now that I'm looking at it again, it's quite interesting. There's a lot of things that I see, and that's coming from someone who is not even remotely close to being all that good at. Could be pain, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I would have to. I wonder if I've got it on my iPad. Let me have a quick squeeze and see. No, I didn't save the zoomed in version on my iPad, and I've got like, if you saw how many photos I have on my iPad from this case, it's ridiculous. I need to go back through and do another sort, because I literally have thousands of images. And, I've also kept on here images from other cases so that if I want to do an update that I can. So my iPad is just chockers. I've got stuff from Phoebe's case. I've still got a lot of stuff from Maddie's case on here, all the other cases that I've covered. So when it comes to trying to find something like this, it's difficult. Although I am scrolling, I've gone right to the end and I'm scrolling forward. Okay, this was on the first page. No, when I zoom in, it says mine. Has impacted mine. Was she going to say mine and somebody else? Because that's odd to say mine has impacted mine. Oh, yeah, I know what she's done. It's just a grammatical error. She was probably going to say has impacted mine and baby M's life. But then she's added her family in as well. So then it's become has impacted my life and baby M and my family. That's what that is. Okay, now go back onto my notes for this. Okay. And I will definitely come back to doing some more on the handwriting. I miss doing lives. It's really hard at the moment because we are heading up to the shortest day, and at the moment I'm struggling to get out of bed before 9:30. So that means that for me to have breakfast, get organised, and get live at a time that's early enough for people over on the other side of the world, it's kind of a struggle. So I just haven't been able to get myself in gear. This one, I had everything prepared already. So I decided about 10 minutes before I started that what the heck, I'm going to do a live stream. And because I can't notify anyone, because I'm doing it as a pop-up, I just threw it in as a members only. So maybe I'll get back to getting up earlier, getting better organised, and getting back on schedule with lives. I think for now, I'll probably stick to recording them as members only lives first. If you guys are keen, I'll try and aim to get back to daily lives that I will, for now, record as members only. Partly because I'm just not organised enough because of, crawling out of bed half an hour before I should normally be going live. And also, just my sleep patterns are completely out of whack at the moment. And, so many other factors. But, we're, a week away from the shortest day, and then it starts getting longer days. I think it will help if we ever get an end to the rain. Usually here it's quite sunny through winter, but we've had some really, really cold weather, and we've had a lot of overcast weather and a lot of rain, and I think that's also impacted on my sleep patterns. Yeah, the time flip, that's the problem here, because I need to try and do my live streams as of a morning, because with winter it's too cold to stay up late. This house is impossible to keep warm. So, by the time when I could be doing a live stream where it would be a morning live stream for people on the other side of the world, by that point in time, it's starting to get cold. Mouse is starting to pester me already for bed. And yeah, I just kind of don't have the focus either. Because, of course, when you have ADHD and you take medication for your ADHD, by the evening, that's wearing off. So a lot of things that are kind of impacting on my ability to jump in and do a live stream at the moment. But hopefully that will improve. Anyway, so we just heard Daniel talking about their favourite show being watching unboxings. And like I said, sounds more to me like him going, well, I like watching Pokemon unboxings. I do Pokemon unboxings on my channel. Maybe that's what they do. It makes me wonder if he was ever around through the day when the kids were up.
To me, you say, you know, loved or did or had, or, you know, something that resembles in the past tense in wording. And I don't mean to do that, but that's just the way I am and the way I talk.
Yes, Daniel, you don't mean to do that. But basically trying to say that it's just the way I am and the way I talk. I bet if you were talking about your own children who are still alive, that is not the way you would be talking. When people give themselves away like this, and they do talk in the past tense, of course they don't mean to do it. Yeah, whenever he or Janie is asked about Jack and Lily, they usually say stuff that aggravated them. Maybe he was annoyed by hearing Lily watch YouTube. That's a really good point. Because think about it. If Lily did watch unboxings, what did Lily do when she got excited? When Lily got excited, and we've even heard this from Belinda, when Lily got excited, she squealed. Now, when she was still little, before they moved away, Belinda told the story about how she'd go to the raccoons would come to the door if they hadn't been fed. And Lily would get excited and she'd give these little squeals. And she said they weren't anything like what they are in that video that we saw. So clearly they escalated as she got older. But when she got excited, she screamed, she squealed. So I think you are spot on there, Grover. It was an aggravation for him because her watching unboxings would have been exciting for her and probably would have resulted in screaming or squealing. I hadn't even thought about that, but that is so true. And I must admit, I don't have little kids around me. Like, my youngest niece is just finishing university. Just hold on for a sec. Sorry. My youngest niece is just finishing university, so you know, she doesn't sit down and watch unboxings. She sits down and watches nerdy things. That means that when I have a conversation with her, I sound like a complete moron because the kid is a genius who knows too much about too many things. Yeah, like the unboxing, so true. But clearly, it's not what they would have been watching in terms of television shows. I wonder if maybe, I mean, we've heard the way him and Janie talk about the children. I really don't think they liked them at all. I think Daniel only tolerated them because he was in a relationship with Malaya. So maybe when the kids were around, when they got home from school, maybe that's when Daniel headed outside and did his things away from the children. And what gets me with him talking about this unboxing stuff, I would have thought, given that he has said that they both had tablets, that they would have been watching unboxing on tablets if that's what they were doing. Oh, look, I doubt very much that he ever got down to their level and talked to them or tried to connect. And I could also see him as being the sort of person that if they were put into the living room to watch telly to keep them out of everyone's way, that's what was happening, that they were basically put in there and ignored. And Daniel went about whatever he was doing and didn't pay any attention to whatever they were doing or watching in the living room. Yeah, a lot of little kids get excited and they squeal when they get excited. So I can imagine it being a real annoyance for Daniel. And I'm going to say welcome in for Carol, but she won't hear this for about 46 minutes because she's starting at the beginning. But welcome in anyway. Yeah, let's keep going with this because he's going to continue to defend himself over talking in the past tense.
I hope people don't take offense to that or, take, key in on those, my vocabulary that I use there.
Okay, so the fact that he has to actually really, really defend himself over speaking about them in the past, that is a major sensitivity for him. Yes, Janie did mock poor little Jack. I just feel that Jack especially was misunderstood on that property. It seems like there was a lot of resentment over him wanting to let the chickens out because, he probably thought they didn't like being cooped up, or him wanting to rescue the worms instead of having these worms being fed to the chickens. He just sounds adorable. And yeah, little girls are supposed to squeal when they get excited. I've not been to any of these little kiddie concerts, but I remember when I was in university, and I think it must have been before I bought the business. I was doing pizza deliveries, and one of our regular customers was one of the radio stations, and they gave me tickets to one of those really popular kiddie shows. One of the ones that was like, really popular back then in Australia. And it was 2 tickets. And of course I had to work. So I gave them to my best friend and my sister. And they went anyway just for the fun of it. And one of the things they commented on was how much fun it was being there, and these little kids were squealing with excitement. Mm. Well, kids learn through imitation. And the chickens, Janie herself said that, the chickens were let out of a morning. So for Jack, that was probably, something like, well, I know that the chickens get let out, and it's probably been explained to them that they get let out so they can fossick and they can dig through the grass and look for worms and stuff. So there was never anything malicious about it. Everything we know about Jack tells us 100% there was never anything malicious about letting the chickens out. So it's sad that Janie was so resentful of that. But Daniel, with this whole having to defend his use of past tense. Now, when you listen to Cindy, when you listen to Belinda, they slip into talking about past tense. They don't defend themselves over it. Because for them, they've accepted that Lily and Jack aren't likely to be coming back. And there's no personal guilt over that. So when they use past tense, they don't notice that they're using past tense because it's not a sensitivity. So for Daniel to become so defensive over his use of past tense, that's a red flag. Because for starters, he has been really, really pushing that he believes the kids are still alive. He has been, for most of the past 13 months, he's still tried to push the narrative of Malaya and her family being somehow responsible for the children being missing and for them hiding them away somewhere. So for him to slip up and use past tense is an admission that he knows that they are deceased. There's no other way of looking at it. Any speech analyst will tell you exactly the same thing. And not only that, Chris McDonough will tell you, I've heard him say this so many times on his show, it is not a natural state for a parent or a grandparent to accept that a child is deceased. When a child goes missing, a parent or a grandparent will fight that thought of them not coming back for as long as they possibly can. So that it might take 6 months or more before you start hearing the transition in their language in terms of speaking about them in past tense. Unless there is something significant that convinces them. So Belinda said in her interview with, I can't remember who she did it with. It might have been with Kayla. That first interview she did, and she said that she knew once Malaya left the property, she knew the children weren't coming back. But if you were a parent or a grandparent of children that just went missing, and there was nothing that was going to clue you in, which is what Daniel is trying to tell us, they've got no idea. They don't know what happened to the children. He's not even considered the Malaya going missing as any sign of guilt, well, Malaya leaving as any sign of guilt. So, in that sense, he should not have been referring to them in past tense early on, if he really gave a rat's. Oh, look, yeah, we always had chores when I was growing up. When I was a teenager, it was my job of a night to make sure that the dogs got fed and things like that. From like grade 7 onwards, I was cooking dinner every night because where my mum worked was like an hour's drive away. So by the time she got home, it was getting on a bit, and it would have been a late dinner for both of us. So I just would cook dinner and have it ready when she got home. I do believe he has guilty knowledge. you're not going to be that defensive over using past tense. And honestly, given that this was done pretty much on the 12-month anniversary, so 12 months in, you could forgive him for using past tense if he were to say, I just don't think they're coming back. From everything the RCMP have said, I don't think the children are still alive. That's why I use past tense. But he doesn't. Instead, he comes out on the defense. Oh, I just use it that way, but it doesn't mean anything. And it's just people, people are, nitpicking. Like, seriously. I am really concerned about the sort of money that Mackenzie Sharilla is likely to be earning from her infamy. It's my understanding that those sort of Netflix shows pay well. I think that was one of the big things. Now, which case was it? I think it might have even been Brian Koberger, where the judge, when they were sentencing him, gave these phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal fines for, it was Brian Koberger, because it was for each of the victims. There was, I'm trying to think, but it was a lot of money, so that basically, if he tried to sell rights to any stories or anything, that money would have to go to the families. I will definitely have to look into what Dominic's sister is saying about that in terms of legislation, because it needs to happen. Definitely, the Son of Sam law needs to be updated, and it needs to be something that is happening in every state. I've only listened to the first 5 jail calls, and I'm horrified by what I hear. And when you hear different accounts from inmates who've been in there with her, she's still an entitled brat. And I don't know if there's any truth in it, but I saw a comment somewhere where someone was questioning if it was true or not that she had like a there's a, I can't think of what it's called. It's I think we don't have it in Australia. It's like a money app, kind of a cash app. Is that it? Cash app. That someone was asking if it was true that she had a cash app and that she'd received something like over $200,000 in her cash app. I think, first of all, I'd love to see a pro bono lawyer jump in and help out the 2 families of Dominic and Davion, help them out with a civil suit against Mackenzie, so that basically any money that she gets is going to go straight to them. Yeah, her mum is definitely acting like a teenage girlfriend. I want to do some videos talking about what's going on in those phone calls. I want to get some more of those phone calls done today, but I also want to make a start on discussing this latest interview that her dad did, because I watched that last night and I was disgusted. So much victim blaming, so much deflection. It at least gave me an answer in terms of who he is. But honestly, both her parents, not nice people at all. Not nice at all. Anyway, let's get back to Daniel and the talking about the unboxings that apparently was all Lily and Jack watched.
But yeah, so Lily loved unboxings of, anything to do with toys. And Jack, his favorite shows were anything to do with dinosaurs. And I mean, he would sit down for like, if you gave him, the TV and you put on dinosaurs on YouTube, he would sit there all day and he loves watching dinosaurs or anything to do with bugs as well. But he mainly liked dinosaurs or loves dinosaurs. That was his big thing. And bugs too as well, or insects. That was always his preferred show to watch. And, sometimes
Again, it sounds like he knows absolutely nothing about these children. Okay, Mouse, come on. Sorry. This is all we've heard. Jack likes his bugs and he likes his worms. And now, according to Daniel, all he watched was bugs and worms and dinosaurs. Well, given the sort of curiosity that Jack had, given his love of animals, I would imagine that there was so much more that he loved other than this really one-dimensional bugs and worms and dinosaurs. That's exactly what he's doing. He's repeating just the same stuff. They're just saying the same things over and over again, which to me suggests they know nothing about these children. They have had very little one-on-one interactions with these children. Like, why can't they remember? Why can't he tell us about some actual TV shows? I mean, this picture in front of me, Lily's wearing a top with Bluey on it. Did someone buy it because it was cute and it was pink? Or did they buy it because the kids liked watching Bluey? Because so many kids that age love watching Bluey, apparently. Which I think is so cute. But we don't hear any of that from Daniel. And when he says, if you give him the TV, how do you give a child a TV? Is he referring to the tablet? Because what he says next really confuses me, given that they have said that they've got tablets. Oh, look, when I was editing that audio from Sunny's live stream, I got to the drone stuff. And you could tell that was after his second toilet break and a break for a drink. And the stuff he was saying about the drones was just too hilarious. He was at Jordan's and there were like 40 or 50 of them. Well, if you were at Jordan's, you were probably both tripping out, dude. Like, honestly, the tweaker logic, that last interview that he did with, the last CBC interview that he did, you could tell he was off his show when he did that. And I think while he's claiming, oh, I haven't touched drugs since before the children went missing, when I listen to some of the crap that he spews, it sounds to me like he is still getting into stuff and tweaking and just hallucinating, because the stories he's coming out with are just ridiculous. Yeah, I think Jack and Lily did have to fend for themselves way too much. I think if they were in there watching TV, it was because they were shoved in there to watch TV and nobody was paying attention to them because nobody wanted to pay attention to them. Yeah, he's Mr. Smooth. It's that attempt at being charismatic. And I think that's the thing that gets under my skin the most. This whole, yeah, listen to me, I'm just such a nice guy and I know so much. I'm gonna use my words that I found in the thesaurus to make it sound like I'm really, really smart as well. But, we're not hearing anything here from him that gives us any notion of what Lily and Jack really liked. And then this comment that he's just about to make about them fighting over the TV, I don't get that. And I'll explain it in a minute. Yeah, they were clearly busy with just being themselves, and Lily and Jack were just ignored by the sounds of it.
Would fight over who would get the TV to watch their next show. And because Lily's like, I don't want to watch dinosaurs. Jack's like, I don't want to watch unboxings of LOL dolls or Monster High or Rainbow High. And, that caused conflict sometimes, but, the kids, right? And you're not going to have two TVs in the living room, one with each different show on there. So they would take turns watching their shows. And
that makes no sense whatsoever. If they were watching unboxings or watching things with bugs on them, wouldn't they be doing that on their tablets? And if so, you can mute the tablets so that they're not competing for sound. So this whole having to only allow them to have one or other on, to me that sounds more like wanting to control the level of noise that was happening when they were watching things. And maybe Daniel just couldn't tolerate having them watching separate things at the same time and having the accompanying noise. Yeah, Daniel and his Pokemon unboxing channel. I played a bit of that a few months ago, and it was just like, okay, so disturbing. But, I don't get it. I mean, kids aren't going to be watching unboxings on a television anyway, because unboxings aren't lengthy videos. So they would have been taught how to scroll on to the next one. Like, where's anything about interaction? Yeah, where's the tossing a ball or kicking a ball in the yard? I mean, I must admit it was my older brother that taught me how to kick a football. Neither of my parents were sporty, but it's those sort of interactions. We're not hearing any of that. Janie gave this story about building a snowbank for the kids. But when you listen to the way she talks about it, it includes her grandchildren. And it seems to me that the stories that Janie has given in terms of interaction with Lily and Jack all involve her doing things with her grandchildren and Lily and Jack just being there. My heart breaks for these children because it sounds like nobody noticed they existed.
And what was the other stuff there? Favorite games? I mean, there wasn't
Favorite
really.
foods?
Yeah, favorite. Well, they really loved all kinds of different foods, but it's if one didn't like it, the other one, strayed away from it.
Yes. These stories that Janie give, like the building the snowbank, they do sound like a one-off. And they do sound like she's telling stories relating to her grandchildren that Lily and Jack just happened to be there for. Hi, Bonza. Sorry, I did send you a message, but it was like about a 5-minute notice of what the heck I'm going to do a members live stream. So sorry about that. It's also one-dimensional. He has to stop and think about what he's meant to be talking about. What was the other stuff? Oh, favorite games. Well, there wasn't really. Bullcrap. I'm sorry, but every kid has a favorite game, that go-to, that they're gonna go and do. According to Janie, Lily liked making mud pies on the kitchen thing that she bought for her granddaughter. That's possibly one of her favourite things. I know every child I know, or every adult who I've known as a child, has had that 1 or 2 games that they just loved playing. Like, that's a big tell for me when he says there was no favourite game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never heard of any child who didn't have a favourite game. He's clueless. It really makes me think. I'm going to speculate. And I think this was the same for most of my generation. The television didn't go on till after dinner. You came home from school and, if you were too young to be doing homework, you went outside and played. And then probably you know, a lot of families would watch the news, but nothing, the TV didn't go on till after dinner. And, you know, there's so many games that children played that didn't involve sitting in front of a television for hours on end. Yeah, I think a lot of people used to call it the idiot box. And look, honestly, it seems to be that way now. When you actually see someone standing in line at the supermarket with a little kid holding an iPad and watching some children's YouTube thing because they can't be without it long enough to go through the supermarket with their family. And, you know, backyards used to be like full of things for playing with. I mean, these kids did have things in the yard. They had a little picnic table out there that you could see. I mean, there were so many things that they could have been doing. So for Daniel to be saying there was no favourite game, either these kids were basically shoved in front of a television from the moment they came home until they were fed and put to bed. It's just unfathomable. I would put money on there not being any unsealed board games or card games in that trailer, in any photos. I wasn't allowed to watch Brady Bunch. My dad was a movie critic. It was one of those things I had to try and sneak in watching it before Dad got home from work. So if he finished work late, then I would try and sneak in watching a little bit of Brady Bunch, because according to him, it was not good acting, it was crap television. Anyway, not going down that track. But, you know, I had one of those totem tennis poles out in the backyard, and I would spend ages outside just whacking that back and forth. And, you know, anyone who was around me as a child, as a teenager, would have been able to tell you so many of the things that I enjoyed doing. But Daniel hasn't even seemed to have observed anything that these children did. Like, it's so sad. I mean, admittedly, you know, I was that generation where it wasn't it was just normal after school to go home, do your chores, and maybe wander off on your own over to the park where half the other kids from school would be hanging out. Or go over to the park and go and play down at the creek, completely unsupervised. And just wander the neighbourhood, go and take your roller skates or your bike over to the school and challenge yourself riding down the hills. But according to Daniel, Lily and Jack just didn't do anything. It's so sad. And then this talking about food. Well, you know, they loved all kinds of different foods. But if one didn't like it, neither did the other. Yeah, that's normal with siblings, but there's nothing, he's not giving any actual details here. And you can't tell me that little kids that age didn't have favourite foods. I think that's what it comes down to. Food wasn't something that you enjoyed if it was being limited. So they would eat anything, and we're about to hear that, just to actually get that bit of sustenance.
But Lily was much more adventurous with food. I mean, I would take like sauerkraut from the fridge and open up the jar, and Lily would just want to eat it with a fork. And so Lily was a much more adventurous with food, you know, compared to Jack. And like that's one of the key things I remember. Like they wouldn't eat like sardines or stuff like that. I mean, most kids don't. But yeah, they were really adventurous with food. Lily more so.
I found that a bit disturbing. The comment about taking sauerkraut from the fridge and Lily eating it from a fork with a fork. Now, I've never had sauerkraut, but it's like gross cabbagey stuff, isn't it? I love cabbage, but like it's like pickled cabbagey kind of stuff. I can't help thinking, based on everything we know now, I can't help wondering if, with the fridge being locked and the cupboards being locked, if the children were hungry and Lily said she was hungry and Daniel went, "Here you go, have some sauerkraut," just being spiteful. Prove to me you're hungry by eating this food that isn't really food for children. I could be wrong, but that's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Especially when he turns around and says, like, well, you know, they wouldn't eat sardines or stuff like that. I know which I'd prefer. But there's nothing. He hasn't given any specific things that they enjoyed. Well, that video when they were at Cindy and Wade's, and they had Wade's granddaughter there as well, and they were picking apples off the tree. They were really enjoying those apples. But apparently, well, I didn't see any signs of any fruit bowl or anything on that property. But you would think that if there was fruit readily available for the children, that would probably be one of the first things that got mentioned. Now, here's the thing with that. So apparently, they would grab things or take things, note the language there, but they would get up on a chair and take food. They had unlimited access to food. But he still can't come up with anything solid in terms of what they would choose to eat. This story about taking sauerkraut from the fridge and Lily would eat it with a fork, that's not her making that choice. That's him making the choice for her. Here, have some sauerkraut. That's not him saying, well, you know, when they went for snacks, they loved having their fruit snacks, or they loved roll-ups, or you know, something like that. Or, you know, funny stories like I my grandmother, or both my grandmothers were from that era when you grew a lot of your veggies and your fruit and stuff. And Nan went through a phase of trying to grow parsley. Problem was, I loved parsley, so when we were there visiting, and she also grew little tiny cherry tomatoes that were just the best tomatoes I've ever tasted. And of course, because my other grandmother had pretty much an orchard with every fruit tree imaginable, we learnt from an early age that you went outside and you fossicked in the garden for fruit or veggies that were available. So poor Nan trying to grow her parsley and her tomatoes, me being a little kid who was just like, well, these are easy to reach and these are things I love, I'd go and eat them. And completely abolished her parsley garden. But we don't hear anything about that from about those kids. You know, what is the one thing that they couldn't get enough of in terms of, if it was there, that would be their preference to eat? You know, spending summertime outside eating apricots till you just about ended up with a bellyache. You know, asking your parents to cook you a particular meal because that was your favourite. Where's that? We don't hear that. We've heard from Angeline that Lily was a food hound and she'd sit there and she'd look at you. And Malaya was like, she wants your food. And Daniel going, well, I'd take sauerkraut from the fridge and I'd offer it to her and she'd eat it. That's nothing at all in terms of what they liked, what they ate. He knows nothing about these kids.
And favorite games, like whenever came to outside time, we used to have a kitchen outside, like one of the toy kitchens, and both of them would make like mud pies or soups, or with the mud and the water, and throw rocks and grass in there. And they did a lot of that.
I also noticed with these two live streams that he did with Sunny and with Charmaine, that it sounds like he has listened now to Janie's audio. And he's now throwing out in these, I noticed it especially yesterday when I was editing the audio from Sunny, because what he's now doing is throwing out Janie's stories as his own. And I think that's, again, this is a story that I think Janie has observed Lily playing in her granddaughter's kitchen, and that's something that's stuck in mind, and now she's mentioned it, so Daniel's running with it. But in terms of both of them, sounds to me like it's not something that Jack would have been interested in. Sounds to me like Jack would have been out there looking for his worms and his bugs and stuff, and not playing kitchen. I mean, ironically, I'm looking at this picture right in front of me that has Jack playing with a little pair of cars. But we haven't heard that from anyone. Did he like playing with cars? Because he looked pretty fascinated by them there. What we're hearing was that he was the sort of kid that they keep referring to him as curious. obviously liked tactile things. So he probably did love playing with cars. But where's the mention of that? Did Daniel just finish work of an evening when he was working full time and then head around to Jordan's and just get off his face at Jordan's and then get home after the kids were in bed? Because he knows nothing about these children at all. Yeah. We're not hearing anything here about family activities. Anything like that. Doesn't seem like anyone really interacted with these. Oops. Yeah, for me, I had tried to listen to the 9-hour live with Sunny. And there were too many segues for me to really maintain focus on it. And that's why I've taken it and started breaking up the audio in the way that I have. Because it means that, well, finally, I'm actually paying attention to the audio. Welcome in, Charlotte. Sorry, I didn't give people notifications. I will try. For now, I'll stick with members' live streams. I will try to do members' live streams. Like, I'll try to get back to daily live streams. It's going to involve trying to actually get out of bed of a morning. But I'm really enjoying being live again. I'm really enjoying having people to bounce things off as opposed to just sitting and recording. I've really missed this. So let's just hope that the weather improves for starters and we get some nice sunny mornings, because I, for one, find it so much easier to wake up and get up when there's sunshine. But yeah, let's go back to Daniel not really talking about Lily and Jack. But this is frustrating me so much. Yeah, I really want to dig into the timeline because there's things that don't work. And if this Alvin McKenzie phone call is real, that also brings Ron's timeline into question. Oh wow, Alberta has had rain, hail, and tornado warnings. We seem to have had more rain here this winter than I've seen in the whole time that I've lived here. Heading into winter, like coming out of summer, I managed to get my lawns under control. And the problem is that because it is a real Mediterranean climate here, the ground never freezes. So the ground is pretty much warm all year round. So you just get a hint of rain and the grass grows like a foot high. And all we've had for probably the last month has just been rain and rain and rain, and then a couple of dry days and then rain again. Seems we're all being inundated at the moment. Okay, so Alberta has the unpredictable weather in June. That's a lot like here it's kind of October's the crappy, unpredictable weather, and then things get really nice by about November, December, depending on where you're at. If the further south you get, the more crappy weather you get. So when you head down to Melbourne, for example, they're probably freezing their butts off down there right now. It's probably raining down there, and they really don't get a lot of sunshine through the winter months. So I guess we're lucky being inland, but finally have green grass. Oh, Bonza. The grass here has been green since that first drop of rain just coming out of summer. And it grows so quickly. It's ridiculous. I have an issue with that discrepancy in the timeline in terms of Malaya's Google Map reporting that they were home. I was only looking at that the other day, but it was long before 4. 3:11. Sorry, yeah, I should have read that properly. He's saying just before 4. That's like a 40-minute gap. And I'm wondering, this is just speculation. I'm wondering if Malaya might have dropped Daniel off somewhere on the way back to the property. And then someone brought him back to the property much later on. Because the other thing that stood out to me when I was editing that audio yesterday is he gives this story of Cindy's phone call occurring when they were sitting in the car. Well, that can't be truthful because detectives looked at Malaya's Google Maps, meaning they know for certain that she was back home at 3:11. They looked at the phone calls between her and Cindy. They looked at the communication. So they know that that communication happened, that FaceTime, whether or not it was with the children, happened after they got home. So I'm starting to wonder if Daniel didn't return to the property at the same time that Lily and Jack and Malaya and the baby returned to the property. If maybe he was dropped off at a friend's place to hang out with that friend and maybe he came home later. Because there's something that just does not add up. Oh wow, Bonds, that you haven't mowed since the start of summer? I'm desperately waiting for the grass to dry out enough so I can mow again. Usually through summer it dies off enough that you don't have to mow it. And in other areas, that would be enough in terms of, you come out of summer, you head into autumn, and you don't get a lot of rain or anything, and the grass is dead. And you're heading into the colder weather, so the grass just doesn't grow again till spring. But here, central Victoria is just, it's warm. And it just, one drop of water and the grass is suddenly a foot high. Yeah, we don't water lawns here. It would be madness to water lawns here because they just don't need encouragement. Malaya said she called from home, but she also said her mum would have seen the kids. And we don't have confirmation of that in Cindy's account. So, I think that phone call did happen. But whether or not the kids were part of that is a different question. But Daniel, not knowing when and where that occurred, it makes me question things, certainly. Oh, yeah. I 100% agree that it's not cruel offering for children to taste different things. And, I grew up in a household where we got a whole range of different foods to try. We were encouraged to try things and not turn our noses up at them. What I was saying in terms of what Daniel was saying here, asked about what their favourite food was, and he straight away goes to, well, Lily would eat sauerkraut if I offered it to her. It just is reminiscent of that sort of spiteful reaction of a person who is limiting children's access to food. And basically a child saying they're hungry and them saying, well, if you're hungry, you'll eat this. Regardless of whether or not the child would like it or would try it. When a child normally says they're hungry, you're going to, if it's between meals, you're going to try and give them a bit of fruit. Or maybe give them some savoury biscuits or something. Something that is going to satisfy them and keep them going until dinner time. So it's just, I might be wrong. I could be just reading it the wrong way. Yeah, I mean, I could be reading it the wrong way. But no, I'm not saying that it's cruel to give children different foods to taste. I mean, the things that we were allowed to try as children. I mean, I loved sardines as a kid. And a lot of kids don't like sardines. And I do get frustrated when you hear people say, well, my kid won't eat that. And it's like, has your kid tried that? No, but my kid won't eat that. So that's the way I thought it too. To me, just knowing the history, knowing the cupboards being locked and everything, just kind of getting a vibe for what Daniel was like, it did make me get the vibe of him teasing her with food that probably wouldn't have been her first choice. I mean, in the DT show, he's talking about them getting yogurts and stuff out of the fridge. And yet here, when he's been asked about their favourite foods, he doesn't make mention of that. Instead, he comes up with this one mention of Lily would eat anything, she would eat sauerkraut. Yeah, I think most people, my generation was definitely, you eat it, you finish what's on your plate. It wasn't even, or you go without, it was just you finish it, full stop, end of story. Yeah, if you are hungry enough and it isn't totally revolting, you'll eat it. there were a few things for me as a child that I drew the line at. I only discovered as an adult that my dislike for Brussels sprouts came from the people who offered them to me not cooking them the right way, because my cousin's wife reintroduced me to them as an adult, and she taught me how to cook them properly, and I was like, actually, these are bearable. I wouldn't go out and buy Brussels sprouts and eat them and cook them for myself, but it comes down to how they were cooked. And there were one or two things like that as a kid that I wouldn't eat. But, you know, I think my personal belief is that these days people are a bit too lenient in terms of if kids turn their nose up at things without even making them try them first. Yes, they do. Now, I know that, you know, age-wise, Lily was going from the baby fat to the, you know, young child look. But I look at that, there's one photo of Lily, and she's got this really round-looking face and real little chipmunk cheeks. And then you looked at that alongside the photos that were taken in front of the fridge. And there's one where Lily is standing side on, and she's so skinny. And she just doesn't look healthy. It's, yeah. I was taught by my cousin that the trick with the Brussels sprouts, oh, nutmeg, yum, butter and nutmeg. What my cousin taught me was that you actually have to cut across into the base of the Brussels sprout. Which, you know, I didn't know, but apparently that's what prevents it from getting that really, really yucky taste about it. Yeah, I mean, clearly they were both going through growth spurts, but at the same time, I mean, we don't know what Cody's like in terms of body type, but Malaya's not exactly your tall string bean kind of person. I think there just is a definite change in appearance in those children in the last 12 months or so. Oh, Brussels sprouts in coleslaw. Yeah, I think a lot of people do boil the heck out of Brussels sprouts, and that's when they get that awful taste to them. These are things that I didn't know because my mum just didn't know how to cook Brussels sprouts, clearly. And other people that offered them to me as a child clearly didn't know how to cook them because I always thought they were mushy, gross things that tasted really off. Oh, roasted Brussels sprouts. I have to do some experimenting. I actually was planning on doing some roast veggies in the next couple of days. Fried. It sounds like either lightly boiled or fried seems to be the way to go with Brussels sprouts. Cabbage. I love raw cabbage. Yeah, we had a whole bunch of different things. My dad, his whole family were loved cooking. And Dad loved cooking. He loved experimenting. He had a lot of the meals that we had were Dad's own special recipes. He never used a cookbook. He just basically started from scratch, and just the amount of different things that we got because Dad loved cooking, or because, his family loved cooking. So, it's something that I think is missing these days, because I think these days people are less adventurous when they cook. Maybe it's a lack of time. I don't know, but yeah, veggies that have had the crap boiled out of them. And I don't know if this is actually, if Nan was like that, but I've always referred to them as grandma veggies or Nan veggies, in terms of, I never knew until I was an adult that you could steam veggies and that they could be actually nice and crispy and yummy, as opposed to just being shoved in a pot and boiled until they're this really grey looking colour. I suspect that these kids possibly didn't get a lot of veggies. I mean, we're hearing that Malaya was apparently a good cook, but whether or not she often made good meals for them. Yeah, Bonza, I think every kitchen needs a good steamer. I ended up upgrading my steamer because I had a cheaper one and I just used it to death. So when it comes to kitchen appliances, I love cooking, so I have just about everything you could possibly need, and I tend to go with the good quality brands because I know that they're going to last. Okay, how are we going for time? I might wrap it up there because it is getting on a bit. Just having a look. There's still a little bit more that Daniel is talking about in terms of what the kids liked, even though he's really told us nothing. I'm going to do my best to drag myself out of bed early enough to go live again tomorrow morning. I will aim for my usual time. In fact, when I get off, I will schedule it. I'll schedule it as a members only, and then make it public after that. But I do want to get back to this, and I think I've missed doing these live streams, so keep an eye out. I will try and make sure I give you advanced warning, and I will schedule a live for the same time tomorrow morning. Yeah, just looking at what people are saying. Yeah, my air fryer, my steamer, and I have a skillet, like a little round electric fry pan. They're the things I use the most. I also have a little it's kind of like a rice cooker, but it's for doing like single serve bleh, a single serve meals. And I use that if I want to like reheat soup or something, and I put that on and it'll heat it up, and then it'll just keep it warm for me till I'm ready. But yeah, they're the things that I use. Yeah, it depends on what the food bank is like in Nova Scotia. I know food banks in Australia are great in terms of fresh food. And the sort of things that you can get at food banks in Australia are really nutritious. There's a place around here that's like it's like an op shop, like it sells secondhand stuff, but it also gets donations of fresh bread and fresh veggies that people can just go and help themselves to. There's certainly options and they clearly were struggling, but I guess it depends on what was accessible to them. Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed doing a live. I did miss doing live streams. And I know this is part avoidance because I should have been working on paperwork this morning. ADHD going, live stream, paperwork. Yeah, let's do the live stream. But I have missed it because it is good to be able to work through these things with input from people who maybe have a different perspective, who can point things out that I miss. So yeah, let's aim to get these back up and running. I will do my best to try and get myself back into a routine. Keep an eye out for a live stream for tomorrow morning. For now, it'll be members only, and then it'll be made public after it is finished. Now, on that note, please help me out by hitting the like button. Right now, that is super, super important for helping me to get these out there into the algorithm. Also, if you're listening on replay, please leave a comment. That's what it is. It's about dragging myself out of hibernation because there's nothing more cozy in winter than being snuggled in under a doona or duvet, nice and warm and cozy, and it's kind of dark and dreary outside, and there's not a lot of motivation to actually get out and function. Anyway, thank you for joining in. So glad everyone made it. Keep an eye out. I will schedule another one for tomorrow, and I will do my best to try and get back on target with these. It makes me feel more positive about continuing with Lily and Jack. I do want to branch out and do some more time on other cases. But for now, I do enjoy doing these live streams. So thank you, and I will catch you again tomorrow morning for another live stream.